It's the thing that keeps you thinking about that new 5-star youth prospect you got while you're cleaning up dishes after a good meal with your family. We're 6 weeks post launch of FM26 and really 8 weeks since the beta dropped. It's time to review the game. Now, I'm 162 hours in, and I feel like I've given FM26 a fair shake. And I'm not even going to make you wait until the end of the video to see what I personally score the game, but I hope you'll stick around and let me know what you think about why I got to that score. And you might be wondering, why do a video now? Why review the game now? And honestly, I planned to do one earlier, but the game was so buggy, I went, okay, I'm going to wait for this big patch. And then they delayed the patch, and then they put out the patch, and it broke other things and needed to have a hot fix. So here we are. And this video isn't going to be overwhelmingly positive. And I love comments when people say, oh, another negative FM26 video. Are you aware of how YouTube's algorithm works? It shows you what you tend to click on. So I'm not trying to add fuel to the fire. I legitimately wanted to wait to give the game a fair shake and get it to a point where I felt like it was worth reviewing. Now I'm recording this on Monday, December 15th. The latest patch is the one that needed to be patched for the hotfix because you'd rest your players and it would put them as surplus to requirements and they'd all get mad. Just providing some context as to where I'm at when you're seeing this. And for me, at this point, the game is a 4 out of 10. SI have put out a buggy game full of holes and revealed that the Emperor has no clothes. I'm giving it a 4 because the game is, for me, playable. For some people, it still crashes constantly. And at times, it is fun. But it's also 4 because it's buggy, full of holes, inconsistent, and ruins the suspension of disbelief that made FM great. If I had to summarize how I feel about FM26, I guess overall, I feel like it is FM Lite. It feels to me more like an arcade game that you speed through rather than a challenging grind that rewards you for digging deep. Now granted, I'm human just like you are watching this video, and I do think first impressions matter a lot. And the first impression of this game was garbage. But even if you ignore that and you say, okay, the first impression during the beta period was really bad, the sixth impression is what's going to stick. We are several patches in now, and the game is what it is. For me, it comes down to that suspension of disbelief and how FM doesn't have that nearly as deep as it used to. Suspension of disbelief is the deliberate choice by an audience or reader to temporarily set aside logic and critical judgment to enjoy a fictional work, accepting impossible or unrealistic elements as real within that story's world. And what makes this work is a world that is consistent. The rules are consistent. The presentation is consistent. It makes it to where you can involve yourself in the story and see that you're in the story rather than watching the story. And that suspension of disbelief is one of the core aspects of the playing of Football Manager as a game. It's what makes it so enthralling. It's the thing that keeps you thinking about that new 5-star youth prospect you got while you're cleaning up dishes after a good meal with your family. It's the ability to take yourself out of I'm playing a video game and into I am in this world. It's like season 8, episode 4 of Game of Thrones, where infamously a Starbucks cup was very clear in the shot. Except that was 8 seasons in, it was one shot, and it didn't happen again. FM26 is full of Starbucks cups. But SI have killed off suspension of disbelief in FM26 through a variety of creative and kind of unbelievable ways. Let's go through a short list, but I'm sure you've experienced different ones, so leave them in the comments below. First, we've got the defensive AI issues. The simple fact that when you watch a ball hit the woodwork and everyone freezes, even for just a second, takes you out of I'm watching a real match and into the, oh right, the game is broken. Starbucks cup. Then you've got the issues that I think they've worked on a little bit and it has improved in the latest patch of wingers driving to the inline and cutting it back for a tap-in. The first time you see it, you go, wow, that was pretty good. When it's the 18th time you've seen it and it's like 75% of your team's goals, you go, oh yeah, the game's broken and it's a game and you're no longer in the world. Starbucks cup. I've had situations on corners where we have a defender standing at midfield to defend against a counterattack, and they take a completely weird angle as the attacking player, who is now countering off of a bad corner, is sprinting down the field, and the defender runs away from them as if to guard space. There's just too many problems inside the fancy new match engine. Yep, you guessed it. Starbucks cup. Then there's the problem with data and the presentation of data. And not all of these are mine. Some of these I'm about to show you come from my Discord. The link to that is in the description below. You should definitely join it if you enjoy discussing Football Manager, football, and other topics, but with good people. So someone in the Discord shared this screenshot, which is a list of players with DFB Pokal losses. And you'll note there are more than one player that have 2 losses in the DFB Pokal. The last time I checked, once you lose in the DFB Pokal or the FA Cup or whatever, you're out. And you might think, GHG, what if the player moved teams? Maybe they've lost with 2 different teams. Nope. The person who shared this screenshot checked the players and they hadn't moved teams. And the same person shared a different screenshot from a piece of news, like a news tidbit that popped up in the game that shows their player, Meist Vorlegen, who's at their club, FC Köln, is actually with Bayern Munich. And again, this just takes you out of your suspension of disbelief, where you go, well, clearly that's not true. And by the way, I don't know if it's the data that's the problem or the presentation of the data that's wrong. But at the end of the day, we all know, unless you moved clubs, you didn't lose twice in the DFB Pokal in one season. Then there's just other weird design choices like the club history screen, which automatically defaults to comparing you to a different club. You also cannot hover and see the positions. The graph is weird. Let's just look at the FM24 version here. And what's sad is in FM24, it just works. You could see that we're in one league. There's not a promotion and relegation. And if there was, there would be another league listed here. And as I hover over the data points down here in the bottom right of your screen, it shows what position we were in. It functions. You can see the history with all the trophies. This is lovely. Okay, let's set the data piece aside because we could be there for quite some time. Let's talk about transfers. A reminder of what the transfer screen used to look like. You can see all of your current transfers, the ones that have already agreed and when they're coming in, how much of a fee you're paying, what position they play, what club. All the things are listed right here. And if you had 20 transfers, there'd be a nice long list of them here. The transfer history screen looks like this, and the drop-down functionality works. You can see release players. You can see the players you brought in on trial. It just works. And this is the transfer history screen we get now, which they have updated in the latest patch, so it at least quasi-functions. But when I go to released players, it's showing me players that I signed that were released. It's not showing any of the players that I released. The transfer activity tab looks like this, which you go, okay, this looks all right, until you realize the previous screen I showed you on FM24 with the green and the blue and any rejected transfers down here are in one long list. That list has been moved to the left column, and this space on this screen will never be used because it is per player. It's not showing you the list of transfers here. The list is actually in this much smaller column. What is all of this screen real estate for? And even making transfer offers is inconsistent, and the inconsistency is the thing that ruins your suspension of disbelief. For example, I want to sign Charles Ondo. He's transfer listed by request for 21 grand. He's listed as surplus to requirements, and importantly, because I think this is a bug with MLS or MLS2 or whatever, he plays for Portland Timbers too. If I click make an offer, before the latest patch, which is 5 weeks after the game comes out, if I went to make an offer, this column just wasn't there. I can make offers to other players, to free agents, the suggest terms and make offer was there, but for 5 weeks, this functionality on an MLS2 player was not there. So I ended up having to sign Charles Ondo for 21 grand rather than suggesting terms and loaning him as a star player for 100 euros a week. As you can see, they would have accepted it. I have a save point. I've gone back in time for this. And so it's not the fact that I had to buy him, it's the fact that I could buy other players through this functionality that worked normally, but for the first 5 weeks of the full release of the game, this functionality didn't work on some players. Again, it takes you out of, I'm in this world, and back into, I'm playing a video game and it doesn't work. Other random things, I got an achievement, like a Steam achievement, which I don't really care about, but it popped up in the bottom corner of my screen. I was like, wait, I got an achievement? What for doing what? It was for winning a game against a player we sold. And I started going, wait, we just played St. Mirren Reserves. I didn't sell anybody to St. Mirren. And when you click through, it ends up, it's Billy Hutchinson, who was on loan at Sterling Albion last season from St. Mirren. So the fact that the loan ended, the game is treating as if I sold him to St. Mirren, which is just wrong. So what is actually better, what's worse, and what stayed the same in comparison to, say, FM24? I'm going to pull up FM24 so we can look screen by screen. I think you know what the FM26 screens look like at this point. Home screen, so much more data and customizable. The previous part of FM24 I showed you was actually using a skin. I've gone to the basic Football Manager skin here. Lots of information and customizable. I think this is better than FM26, so FM26 is worse here. Inbox messages, including a scout report. has gotten significantly worse in FM26. I can actually make a determination if I want to continue scouting this player from this screen. Not to mention the leagues in focus, which is also under the inbox tab, which shows you everything you could ever want and is customizable. The squad screen is about the same. I will give them credit for one improvement here in that you can actually move columns relatively easy now, although it wasn't that case in the beta, and it took a couple patches before they'd stop randomly moving around, but it is better. The squad planner to me is about the same, although the screen real estate here is wider than what you're seeing in FM26. That's a pretty consistent theme though. The dynamic screen is much worse in FM26, particularly the hierarchy, where it looks like a hierarchy in FM24 and a list of players in FM26. Garbage. I'd say the tactics screen is about a wash because there are things about FM26 I like, namely the in and out of possession aspects of it, and there are things that I don't like being able to visually see what we're doing rather than the huge list of boxes and text along the right side in FM26. Data Hub was never really my thing, but for those that it was, I think clearly FM26 is a bust on data. FM24, much, much better. The staff screen is so pathetic in FM26. I can now see how good my staff is. I can see how many I've got. I can actually hover over them, see how much that they're making. I can click on them very quickly. I can see their attributes. The staff side of the game is a complete bust in FM26 in comparison to previous editions. Training is so much worse. It takes so many more clicks to get to training in FM26. The data here is nice. It actually feels meaningful, and the screen real estate, again, screen real estate is used more effectively here. The medical center, in my opinion, is probably a wash, and it's about the same until you realize that the image that they used in FM26 is not gender neutral, despite the fact they added the women's game. They used the same image. What are we doing? The fixture schedule is so much worse in FM26. You don't see the round of the cup that you're in. You can't see how many more days it is until the next match. It tends to jump you down to hide the other results and just show you your next game, not your recent run of games. I think FM24 is fantastic with this. The columns are adjustable. You don't get that in FM26 at all. It's the middle of the summer because I holidayed my old FM24 save, but you can actually see the competitions you're in and where you finished and what the table looks like. This is so much worse in FM26. I was never the guy doing deep dives on scouting and looking at youth intakes in random countries in order to poach players before they became real things, but I think we can all agree scouting is not going well in FM26, and this screen is a lot better in FM24. You can click on scouting coverage, you get this lovely map. All of this is missing. I can see what they were doing on the club info screen. This is kind of random, but again, when you go to the history, this is so much better in FM24 than it is in FM26. It's clear where you're supposed to go. On the current FM26 screens, you get all of this information in like 8 or 10 or whatever it is tiles. It's information overload. The club vision is about the same, except I'm a little confused as to why the supporters are just a smiley face instead of a grade, but that's probably being a bit nitpicky. The finances tab in FM26 is so much worse than this. Again, you can hover and you can see up there that the bank balance appears, or if I hover here, the profit and loss this month appears. You don't get any of that in FM26, and I don't trust the data anyway. The development center is a lot worse. The youth training, staff, fixtures, scheduling, all of it is so much worse in FM26. And again, that's not to say the game isn't fun. I'm not acting when I do my Sterling Albion save, but the issue that SI has created is that all of that friction, all of that, well, that's not right, or why is that happening, over and over and over as you play through a game or through a save or whatever, grates on you and reminds you that you're playing a game and takes you out of that suspension of disbelief. And part of this is the inaccuracy in the data and the ability to find it and hover over it and things like that. You start going, I don't trust anything that's in the game. Despite the fact that I just roasted the UI by looking at FM24, I actually don't think the UI is the problem. Hear me out. If we had a new match engine that looked different and we had a new UI that looked different, and those were the only changes, meaning scouting worked, youth training worked, you weren't getting news items showing that your player is at a different club, you didn't have inconsistencies with data showing a player having 2 losses in the DFB Pokal when they've been with one team, if the player and club histories and the graphs and all of that worked, if the dynamic screen looked like the old dynamic screen in a hierarchy, if the achievements are right, if the defense actually reacted when the ball hit the woodwork, then I think we're having a completely different conversation. There'd still be people detracting and saying, oh, the UI, and I don't necessarily disagree with them. I don't love the UI, but you'd get used to it because you'd feel like, well, this is what I have to use to be immersed in this world. The problem is not the UI. The problem is the inconsistent world. So for me, it's a 4 out of 10, and it's a game, unfortunately, that was marketed as an 8 out of 10. When you've got Miles coming out in a GQ interview saying, "You can't polish a turd," and FM25, parts of it were turdy, what we're polishing now is a diamond. That is just factually not true in this situation. FM26 is bad in comparison to FM24, and that's why you've seen player numbers drop off a cliff. Again, I think there are 100 million reasons this was done, a link to that video and why Sega probably forced the issue, but that doesn't make it okay for all of us that spent $40 or $50 or quid or euros or whatever on a game that was marketed as the finished product. I think right now, as of December 15th, we're probably to a point where you'd be in a regular beta release. Things where you go, well, there's still some bumps in the road, there's some glitches. My under 18s have me listed as the manager when I'm not, but that's not where we're at. We're 6 weeks into a full release game, and they just announced, I just saw it, that they're gonna not have another patch for console or touch until the new year. Those are my thoughts, my friends. As always, keep it civil in the comments, but I'm curious if you agree or disagree. How would you rate FM26? Let's leave those below, and we'll see you next time.